Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hi, my name is Marcus Williams, and I'm here with co-host Brock Morris, and today we have special guest Emma Faye. Emma, aka the Clean Reads Queen. Emma is a versatile audiobook narrator passionate about bringing clean reads to life, with over 100 audiobooks and 20 years of acting experience. She finds great joy in captivating audiences with engaging yet family-friendly content. Whether it's a thrilling YA fantasy, a heartwarming sweet romance, an inspiring self-help book, or something in between, she is committed to delivering high-quality performances that align with her passion for wholesome literature. Her dream genre? Christian suspense and teen paranormal. She is great at distinguishing multiple characters through their personalities and accents, and she dives deep into the story and characters to bring them to life. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Emma decided to give me a reprieve. Actually, that's not why, but she, instead of giving us a lie, she went with 3 truths. So Steve has a break today. Our scorekeeper can take the day off. He can take a vacation day.
It's a good day for Marcus. Yeah.
Yeah, good day for me. I can't fall further behind. So let's just read your 3 truths and get to know you a little bit better. Number 1, I have Irish step danced on the cliffs of Moher in Ireland. Did I say that right?
Yeah. More.
Yeah.
It depends.
More.
Yeah. Depends on where you're from.
Irish accent is one that I can never do. Anyway, number 2, I'm a crazy cat lady and have 4 cats, plus the one in your booth behind you. And number 3, I am the president of my local community theater. All right. Very cool. We have a lot to talk about today. You are our first narrator on the show. We've had authors who have narrated their own books. We've had authors who want to narrate their own books, but you are our first full-time narrator. So we're super excited to have you on the show and to see your perspective of clean content and bringing to life someone else's vision or book, because that's what you do is so important to like bringing it alive for the readers. And so how did you get into narrating?
I've been an actor my whole life, and so it was a very natural transition for me. And this will bleed into the whole conversation, so I'll just kind of share my story. So I've been an actor since I was a kid. I'm from California, did the whole LA thing, and wanted nothing more than to be an actor as a child. And I couldn't wait to graduate high school, move down to LA and do the film thing. I attended film school. But I soon realized that the standards that I held very dear conflicted with Hollywood. There were a lot of films and a lot of projects I just wasn't comfortable being a part of. Even in film school, having to watch certain films was a big challenge for me. And I realized that I had to make a choice. I could follow my dreams of being an actor and a filmmaker, or I could maintain the standards that I held very closely, because they just really didn't work together. I ended up moving away to try a different film market, a little more conservative market. And I came to Utah, as they make a lot of films here, and it's a little bit more conservative. And I was like, maybe they'll understand standards a bit more. Didn't work out still. And I kind of gave up on the industry, on performing for a while. Just said, okay, I'll figure out other things. This is not what I meant to do. And so for a while, I didn't do any sort of performing. I just did the normal college, the normal work stuff. Yeah. And then a few years ago, I got back into community theater, and it just reignited my love for performing. And now, as mentioned, I do run a community theater out here myself, and it's beautiful. But it really, it made me want to get into it more. And during that time, I was commuting down to a job, and I was listening to audiobooks like crazy during my commute, and realized at light bulb moment, this is acting. And so I was like, well, maybe I can do that. And maybe, I can read the books that I'm interested in that don't have content that I find objectionable. And
Yeah.
so I started auditioning. I took some classes first. I took some voiceover and some audiobook specific classes. Even though I'd been an actor my whole life, it's very different behind the microphone. So I took classes, did some training, and I auditioned for 3 books. I booked my 3rd one, and it was a trilogy. And 5 years later, 110 books down. So it's been wonderful.
That's awesome. And it's cool that you've been able to find the niche or find the content that you want to do, that where now you can choose. In I've followed a few actors in Hollywood who have struggled through their career where I can't remember his name, but he won't kiss anyone that is not his wife.
Yeah.
That's just his rule. And he's faced a lot of adversity and faced a lot of people who parts that he couldn't take that were great parts that could have really advanced his career. And it's unfortunate that having standards or morals is seen as a bad thing in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like
it's a really sad commentary on
right. Like, that just saying that sentence just doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
Like, that's not how it should be. We should want people that have strong morals, or do movies that they actually feel comfortable doing or want to do or fit within there. So that's
and it's so fascinating too, because authenticity is such a buzzword right now, and casting authentically both on film as well as books, and DEI initiatives are big, which is wonderful. We need more diversity, but so on, that authenticity is what people want to go for. And I'm like, okay, I don't actually swear in my real life, so giving me a book that's riddled with swear words is not authentic to me. So why is it weird for me to say no to that? That's not authentic, and that's what we want, is authenticity. So it's just an interesting double standard that I come across often.
Which I assume would also carry over into the quality of your work. Is that right? Like, to try to do something that didn't align with you. And we've had authors say that before too. If I tried to write something that wasn't clean, I actually wouldn't be very good at it because it's not true to me.
Yeah. I mean, I've never said the F word in my life aloud. It would sound so weird coming out of my mouth in a book. I couldn't do it, honestly. There's even some words and some scenes that push some boundaries that I'm like, okay, that's getting a little far. And I'm like, yeah, I just feel super weird saying it or doing it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of actors rationalize that, oh, well, I'm just playing a part, so this is not me, so it's okay when you're playing a part. But it's going to impact you, no matter whether you're playing a part or it's
especially
you.
If you're doing it right, because our job is to get into that character and to really dive into their mind and their feelings and portray them honestly. And that's harder with certain roles.
Yeah. So how do you find the books? How do you connect with those clean authors then?
Yeah. So I work both with indie authors and publishers. And so there's some websites out there that authors can post their books for auditions, or I just do reach outs, or I go to conferences and talk to authors. As you read, and as my screen says, my nickname is the Clean Reads Queen. And so I put that on everything. So I make it very clear up front. Clean reads are it. And so a lot of the times the people who don't do clean just don't talk to me, and that's fine. We don't cross paths. Not that we can't talk, we just don't cross paths.
Right.
And so that helps, just putting it out there up front. This is what I do or don't do. Publisher work gets a little harder sometimes, because they don't have time to read through the books to know what the content is. And so I do a lot of research before I audition for a book or submit myself to be considered. So I have a whole thing that I do is if it's available on Amazon, especially if they have a paperback version on Amazon, you're allowed to do a keyword search. There's a magnifying glass and you can search keywords. So I type in all these words that I'm uncomfortable with, which is always interesting to do. So I just go through. I usually start with the F word because that's a hard line for me. And if it's in there, then I'm just going to say no to the book in general. If that's not in there, then I have a bunch of other words or phrases that I'll search, whether that's certain swear words or words that denote sexual content.
Right.
And then if it looks clean from there, or if I can't find anything if they don't have a preview available, I'll read reviews, because sometimes people say, oh, this was clean or low spice or whatever. Or I'll look at books that the other books that the author has written, because if they have swearing in one book, likely it's going to be in another book if it's in the same genre. So I do a lot of upfront research before I even consider auditioning for a book. And that's both indie and publisher work. So
that's a lot of prep work. And so do you just have like a list or a spreadsheet that you follow for those search terms and run them all as you for each
pretty
one?
much. I mean, I don't have it written down or anything. They're just few words. It's really actually not too hard to find certain words after a while. You're like, oh, that's the type of words they use. Got it. Certain body parts. It's like, okay, gonna search that, and then I know right away.
And I would imagine a lot of people listening don't realize that search functionality is there. So could you went over it briefly. Can you walk them through someone who would be interested in trying that and how to find it and what to do?
Absolutely. So on Amazon, if you look at the preview or look inside button, and if they have, so most often you'll see Kindle, and then sometimes they'll have a paperback option. And if you click paperback, then a magnifying glass pops up and you can do keyword searches. And it doesn't always show you the sentence that the word appears in. Sometimes that's redacted, for a better term. And so, but you'll know that word's in there. Sometimes they'll show you the whole sentence, like they'll go to that page and you can read the context of that sentence. So yeah, that's how I search. Also, if it's on KU, Kindle Unlimited, and you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can download the book and do a whole keyword search throughout the whole book. And that doesn't cost you anything extra than your KU subscription.
Right. That's a great resource. And no one has brought that up yet. So I think we've talked a lot about how to figure out whether the book has content or not. And that's just another tool. Unfortunately, it's still a lot of work up front that you have to do because it's just not available to you. But that's another tool that people can use to try to find those instead of buying the book and then realizing halfway through that it's a book you're not going to finish.
I actually met somebody recently at a conference, and I could connect you guys after. She's working on basically a Goodreads for clean reads. And it's this whole app that she's putting together and getting a bunch of authors' input on it. So I'd be happy to connect you guys. She might be a great guest for this. Yeah,
that would be great. We'd love that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyone working in this space, and I think we need to work together and collaborate and figure it out for everybody to help everyone.
And I've been told this by fellow narrators. They see me as a pioneer within the audiobook world, within Clean Reads, and that means a lot to me. I'm paving the way. It's not easy to stand strong in what you believe and to say no. I have to say no quite often, and it sucks. And thankfully, I'm in a position in my life that I am blessed to be able to do that. I can say no to projects. I understand 100%. You got to make a living. Sometimes books come and you've got to eat, and so I understand why some people take some books. But I thankfully am in a position that I can say no. And so I'm really trying to pave the way for other narrators to feel comfortable also saying no to what they don't want to do.
That touches on a question I had. How big is that community of clean narrators? We're finding more and more as we started this that the clean author community is pretty large, but I haven't really delved into that. Are there a lot of competition, a lot of collaboration,
Good
I mean, you
question.
just said you're paving the way, but
Yeah, it's pretty small. There are a handful of us. So there's a handful of us that want strictly clean reads. And we do what we can to stay in that realm. And I think you guys have mentioned this on other episodes. There's thresholds. People have different, definitions of what clean is, and so it
Right.
varies. But for the most part, there's a small handful that just want the clean reads. Then you have a handful of narrators who want clean reads, but they also don't care. They'll do whatever comes their way. But it's very
Yeah.
interesting. I actually started a small production company to cater just to clean reads, because my voice isn't right for every book. Maybe they, for whatever reason. I mean, it could be they need a young female voice, but my voice isn't it, or they need a male or whatever. So I started a small production company that produces books in addition to my own narration. And I get narrators applying to be on my roster fairly frequently. And two comments I get all the time is, one, Emma, do you have any books? Because I really need a palate cleanser. I've just done so many dark things and I just need something not dark. Or two, it's, do you have any books? I want a book that my mom can listen to. So I get those two all the time. So even people who don't specialize in it like I do, they still want it. You'll hear from many narrators that their favorite are middle grade or YA because they're fun and they're not dark. And like we talked about, getting into character, some of these books get really dark, and I can only imagine sometimes how their booths must feel after a session of reading some really dark literature. So
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're building an entire brand around this, that it's not just this is what you want to do. You're actually creating a brand, a company, and so that people can find you and know you and clearly understand what it is you do and what you don't do just from your brand.
thank you.
I think that's very cool. So with the production company, are you that one of the other issues that we've talked about with authors is authors that really want an audiobook, but can't afford it, but understand that narrators deserve to be paid the wage commensurate with the skill and, their talent. What are your thoughts on the industry and how could it be improved, or
Absolutely.
what could we do?
It's expensive. It is. It adds up for an audiobook. But if you look at it as an investment, because that's what it is, you just changing your perspective on it helps. Obviously, that doesn't put money in your bank, but looking at it more as an investment is really important, because you are going to be hitting new audience members. You are going to be finding readers that would have never picked up your book otherwise. I rarely read a book for fun. I don't have time anymore with all the books that I'm narrating, but I still listen to audiobooks all the time. And so people are like, oh yeah, I've got a great ebook. I'm like, I wish I could read it. I don't have time. I only do audio for fun. And so it's a whole, and there's other people that like me, they're not doing what I do, but people who only want audio. And so it's an entirely new audience, as well as there's also a lot of audience that crossover that love having the ebook and the audio version available. And so they can go back and forth. Audible has a cool thing called Whisper Sync, that it syncs your Kindle book to the audiobook. So you can pick up wherever you are, and people love getting both of those together. So it really is just hitting a new audience base. So it's an investment for that. That being said, there are ways to go about it. I've had a bunch of authors do Kickstarters to fund their audiobooks, which has been very successful. There's royalty share options out there. Not all narrators will do royalty share. It is quite a gamble to do that. Especially because we pay our editors up front to edit the books. That's not our job to edit. Our job is to perform it. And so we hire out the editing to make sure it sounds good and it's clean and it meets all the specs. And so we have to make sure we're going to make the money back that we're investing. And so royalty share is a gamble. Some people have certain criteria that they'll only do, like the Kindle has to be selling a certain rank or a certain number of reviews, a strong marketing plan, those types of things. So if you are interested in royalty share, focus on those things. If you don't have money to pay a narrator, focus on getting a strong marketing plan together and pushing your ebook as much as possible. And then it'll be more appealing to a narrator to take that risk with you.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's awesome. As far as I know, Brandon Sanderson recently worked with Amazon to change how royalties work and stuff. So talk to us about all that for those of us who don't know what happened.
Absolutely. So that is an interesting one. So as far as I understand, and I could be completely wrong, I've tried to figure this out for sure, and I haven't gotten answers, is that doesn't really apply to indie authors as much as small publishers. I could be wrong. I would love to know the answer. Because there's a website out there, Audible's Creation Exchange, where authors can post their books for auditions and get narrators, and the royalties are kind of dismal. If you go exclusive to Audible, you get 40% of your royalties, and that's it. If you do royalty share, you only get 20% because your author or your narrator gets 20%, which is really low. And then if you go wide, if you want your book available widely, and especially in libraries, then you only get 25% from Audible. And so it's pretty low numbers. And that's something that Brandon was fighting for, is to get better royalties. When we're the ones that are putting in the work, the authors are putting in the work, they should be getting more than what they're getting on that work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I understand that Amazon is hosting and they're paying for the servers and all that stuff, but right. It's hard to see an argument where Amazon is saying we need more money.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, at least,
and as we talked about,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to at least make it the same as ebooks, right? That they get 70% on ebooks if they go exclusive, I believe. And so why not make it the same there? I mean, that would certainly help everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an industry ripe for disruption from that standpoint. We've talked about it before, and I think that's partly what Brandon did also with his Kickstarter campaign. I think one, because it's the way he wanted to approach it, but two, just to show that, hey, this can be done a different way, and maybe it's time the industry start paying attention to the fact that it is dismal for narrators and authors, and that has to change. It just doesn't seem right.
Absolutely, and we'd be more willing to do royalty share if it wasn't 20%. We were getting, because we put so much work into these books. They turn into our babies, just like they're the author's babies. It turns into ours. And just for context, a lot of people don't know how long it takes to create an audiobook. A professional audiobook narrator is looking at about 5 hours per finished hour of work. And that's a professional ratio. My first book was probably 8 to 10 hours. Per finished hour. And so, I mean, even if you're looking at a 4-hour book, that's 20 hours of work right there that you've just put in. Plus, hiring out our editors and the time it takes to prep. And if there's new accents in the book, we pay accent coaches to come help us figure out the accents. Like, we're investing a lot into these books, not just money, but a lot of time as well. And so 20%, especially on a book that's not selling well, we're not going to be keen on that. That being said, I will do royalty share on occasion if it's a new genre that I really want on my portfolio that I'm having, like, I can't break into, like, I haven't found any paying offers. Sometimes I'll do a royalty share to break into a new genre. So because that has different value than monetary.
Sure. And that's important. Like with an ebook, there are services out there where I can sell my ebook directly and bypass all the big stores and everything. Audiobook, because of the technology, is just not. There are a couple services out there, but there's just not quite there yet. How to get the audio, because an audiobook has to have certain features. When you're listening to it, it has to remember where you left off, and all that stuff. So if someone can, I know there are some people working on it, direct selling. It'll be interesting when that happens, what will happen with the big sellers like Amazon and other industries. If I can sell my audiobook directly to a consumer and I'm not paying any royalties, only processing fees, like that'll be a game changer.
And it is already for a few authors out there. There's a service called BookFunnel that can do audio, and I know a number of authors who have put their audiobooks up on BookFunnel and then have a storefront on their website, and they are making a lot of money that way. And readers like it; they like supporting the author in that way, and they know that full, and then they can price it cheaper than what Audible prices it. So if an Audible credit is around $15, they can sell it at $12 on their website, but they're making that whole $12 instead of 20 to 40%.
Yeah.
So
right.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah. There's another one, Sound, that I've tried, but they basically what it does is it downloads into your podcast app.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you don't have to, and that's the big hurdle, is getting the readers to download a new app, because they already have Audible, they already have Libby, they're used to those. So getting them to download a new app is difficult. So in this version, it just downloads to whatever podcast app, but there's still some confusion because people aren't used to listening to audiobooks on the podcast app. But
I'll have to check
but then you're also paying that service. And so if you're not selling well, you're paying for a service that's not.
Whereas you don't have to pay anything for Audible. So right. I get it.
So all these things out there that I think people are working on that hopefully will disrupt the industry at some point to make it better for narrators and authors.
Absolutely.
If an author doesn't have to pay, doesn't get dismal royalties, and then they can afford to pay more to the narrator and pass it on.
And, and I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just, going back to clean reads, like disrupting the industry is also going to help clean reads, because it's hard. I've noticed that a lot of authors who specialize in clean reads, they sadly don't sell as well as some of the spicier reads, and so they don't have as much. But if we are able to disrupt the industry, then it just helps these smaller niches to grow as well. So
if we create a location that people can go to find the products that they want, i.e. clean books in all its different forms, that's going to grow. It'll become a destination.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than the exception. We did a search, just some research on Amazon, because you can I've got a program where you can look at how many, the search terms, you can put in a search term and it'll tell you how many times a month that term is put in. And Brock, can you remember, it's
like 230,000 per month of some form of looking for clean books, or it was insane. Yeah,
that's amazing.
And that was only the search terms that I could think of. So there's people, when it comes to search terms, people put in some random wacky stuff. But so that's just the search terms I could think of. There were
that's amazing.
250,000 searches per month for clean books.
Yeah, people want
the content.
Yes. I love that so much. And what I love about that too is, I mean, this is a whole other conversation we could have, and you guys may have experienced this already, but there are some people out there who really hate the word clean. But that just shows right there, that is what the readers are searching for. That's why I still use the term, because it's what is understood. And people balk at it, they hate it, but that's what the readers are looking for. So that's the word I'm going to use until the industry comes up with another word that is accepted by everybody that means the same thing. It's the word I'm going to use, because that's what readers look for.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It's a very loaded term, which is one of the reasons we used it. But if you ask anyone, how would you describe content that doesn't have X, Y, and Z? Almost all of the time, they're going to say clean.
Yep.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've even had authors on the show. We've asked, well, how did you find us? How did you hear about it? And it was because of just search terms. Clean worked as a search term.
And I mean, that is also the Amazon category for clean romance is clean and wholesome. So even Amazon is using it, and they're the biggest publisher in the world, right? So if that's what's used by them and that's what people are searching, then that is the word. Sorry if you don't like it, but it's the word that people are searching. So
I wish they would include that category in other genres.
I do too. Yes. And I talk about that all the time, because anytime people know that I do clean reads, they're like, oh, clean romance. I'm like, well, yes, actually, I do a lot of clean romance, of course, but I do just about every other genre out there. Fantasy is my favorite, and there is clean fantasy, and there is not clean fantasy. Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite examples to use. His books are clean, and he doesn't have to market them that way, but they are clean by most people's definitions. They would be clean. And I would love if there was a way to search content or know other genres other than romance, if they're clean or not.
Yeah, because even though Brandon doesn't necessarily market his as clean, I'm sure he, or obviously a lot of other authors, would love their books to come up in a search when that term is used, right? That would help bring visibility. I'd love to, you touched on a little bit earlier, sort of the fact that narrating books is a profession, and the investment in time and effort. As an avid audiobook listener, I've been fascinated by the process, and it's sort of a black box to me. I'd love if you could spend a couple of minutes just sharing with us. Yeah, no kidding. Sharing with us what does that process look like? How do you prep for? You started to touch on it. How do you prep for? Do you always read all the way through before you start recording? And how do you know when to do different voices? And maybe just give us some, help us look under the hood a little bit of what it looks like to narrate an audiobook.
Yeah, so I get the manuscript, and we reread the whole thing front to back. And there's always this anecdotal story that gets told to new narrators of you read the whole thing up front, because there has been times where you'll get to the last 3 chapters and realize that this guy had a German accent the whole time. Like, that's really the first real mention of it. And so yes, we do read the whole thing. We need to know where the story's going. I have heard from a handful of, I think, like thriller narrators who don't read like the last 2 chapters to get that, authentic thrill. But most of us just read the whole thing. And so a lot of narrators will highlight the scripts. They'll highlight each character in different colors. I don't do that myself. But I will make a list of all the characters that are in the books, any description of their physical description, their vocal attributes that are listed, and then any words that I need to learn to pronounce, and any accents that these characters may have. And if it's an accent I don't know, then, like I mentioned before, I will hire an accent coach to help me. If it's a significant character, if it's a smaller character, one of my little tricks I use is I go to Fiverr and I find a native to wherever that accent is, and I will send them the lines, only if it's a handful, and say, hey, how much would you charge just to record these in your accent, just so I can hear them and learn them? So I do that often too.
That's a good idea.
If it's a major character, I'm going to hire a dialect coach and get me through the whole book. But so that's a lot of fun. And then I kind of hop in the booth and play around with the voices, and I let the characters tell me what they sound like. It's not so much about, pitching down for males as it is knowing who their character is, what their attitude is. Pitch is only one dimension of changing your voice for a character. It's really about their attitude and their personality. So they speak to me and tell me what they sound like, and then I go in and record it. With indie authors and some publishers, you have what's called a 15-minute checkpoint. And you'll record about 15 minutes of the book to give a sampling to the author of these are the voices that I'm intending to do. This is the pacing. This is the flow. And they'll approve that or give you some feedback, and you'll change it. And then you go read the rest of the book with those choices. So it's a lot of fun.
That's fascinating. And I think that's so important to bring some light to that, because I don't know that all authors really understand what they're paying for. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, they kind of dismiss this of, oh, well, that's either too expensive or I don't really understand why. And I think you just hit multiple points. If you want a quality narration, hiring a dialect coach, the amount of time investment, even that, what you said, 5 to 1 were the hours of invested time and effort. Is there a genre that's harder to narrate than others?
Some nonfiction. is challenging because there's a lot of words sometimes that you have to look up. I did a book that had a lot of like Latin and Greek terms and like dead languages, and that was very challenging to learn how to pronounce some of these words. And so that took a long time. That was usually I can record, so just the recording part at 2 to 1. So it takes me 2 hours to record 1 hour. So that's not including the prep or anything. That book took me almost 3 to 4 to 1, because I just had to pause and stop so many times and be like, okay, how do you pronounce that word? So that got challenging. As far as genres, I haven't seen, at least for me, I haven't seen a pattern in genre, but it does change book to book and author to author. I have one author that I adore doing books for. Her name is Melissa Baldwin, and she writes like I speak. And so it just flows and goes so fast. And her characters are just so spunky and plucky, and they're so fun to voice. And her books just go so fast. I can get through them super, super quickly. But there's other books that it's just, the writer, it's great writing, but it's just not how I speak. And so words just get transposed easily. And I'm like, that's not how they're saying it. That's how I would say it. And so it takes a while to get into the groove.
Yeah. I love what you said. Just your comment about pitch. Because when I was doing my own book, narrating my own book, that's one of the things that I listen to audiobooks all the time too. And it's not something I noticed until I was doing my own. And then I went back and started paying attention to the books I was listening to, the professionally narrated ones, and realized that you think, like, you're in your mind, you hear a tone change in the pitch between male and female, but it's not really. It's like you said, the characterization. So I love that you brought that up, because it was something that it was like a light bulb moment.
It's
for
so
me.
subtle. Yeah, it is really fascinating. Like, I've had that moment as just a reader as well of, man, like, I thought that was a guy. I mean, not really. I know it's a woman speaking, but just they've encapsulated that character so well, and it's not the pitch. I mean, that pitch might change slightly, but it's
a little bit.
Know that character inside and out, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy speaking.
That jumped out to me a lot in a book I was just listening to, where they had both a male and a female narrator who would change at chapters, and I thought at first that it was going to throw me off in the point of view. But Marcus, I mean, that's exactly was my experience. Is it didn't matter who was narrating, whether it was the male narrating a female or the female narrating a male. Like I heard it, but then I started paying attention. It just, the tone was the least component of it, right? Yeah. The characterization was so well done that, it was great.
And we've had conversations before, like, I threw out a name of a narrator to Brock, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember this book." That's the importance of narrators. Absolutely. Is you get to the point where you'll even listen to books that you would normally never even read just because your favorite narrator.
Absolutely, there's one click by.
And I would say and I would say the reverse is true. And this has happened to me. I may love the author, and when they change narrators on me, I'm like, sorry, I'm out. Like, I cannot listen to I love you as an author, but you just messed with my world. And I love my narrator. I have a relationship with this narrator who makes me feel like I'm at home listening to this book, and I can't finish your series.
Absolutely. I had this situation. So I love Chirp audiobooks. It's one of my favorite platforms to purchase books on. And Chirp has great deals. And so they were like, here's a sale on these books. And I'm like, oh, these look really interesting. So I started adding there's 8 books, and I added them all to my cart because they were like $1.99 each. And then I went back, and right before I clicked purchase, I was like, oh, I want to see who the narrator is. So I go through the first 3, and I didn't recognize the name, but I was like, cool, that's great. And then I go to the 4th one, and it was virtual voice. It was AI. And I'm like, not going to do it. So I didn't buy him. And I'm like, it's so frustrating. It's like, you had a human voice for the first 3. Why would you do that? So it was frustrating. And that's a whole other can of worms.
That's a whole other can of worms, especially talking to a professional who's facing this AI and what it might do to your market. Absolutely. But it's just, there is no voice in AI. That's the problem. Soul. The voice doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to jump down that rabbit hole, but that would go
That's a whole nother
deep
episode.
and long. There's
Happy to come
absolutely,
back.
right.
We
but it
can
is a
talk about that.
fascinating. Yeah, we absolutely will. We absolutely will.
I just saw a meme, and I'm gonna murder it, but it essentially was, I finally realized that we have a soul. That is, the point that made me realize that a soul exists is when I listened to something in AI,
Yes.
and now I like that made that that made me believe that there is a soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
So that's pretty cool. So for someone, I had one of my books narrated, and I chose a college student because she was trying to get into the field and she wanted to work at it, and I wanted to support that effort. What advice would you give to an actor kind of in that same situation who wants to get into this professionally?
Take classes, find a coach. As I mentioned earlier with my journey, like I took classes specific to audiobooks. It is different. It is acting 100%, but it's different than being on stage. It's different than being on camera. In some ways, it's closer to being on camera because it's such an intimate thing. Like I've had one coach say, like, pretend that the microphone is a camera because it's a close up. But I've also had a lot of stage things come into play of, the multiple characters. It's basically you're playing an ensemble yourself. And so, yeah, you have to do every single character plus the narrative. So there's just a lot of different techniques that you don't know as an actor when you get behind the mic. And even if you have voiceover experience, long form is still very different than doing a 30-second commercial spot. So taking classes would be the biggest advice, and just to realize how long it's going to take. A 4-hour book, if it's your first book, is going to probably take you 30 hours to do, if not more.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. To go in with your eyes wide open of what you're getting into and the challenge, and don't assume that because you have acting experience that it will translate directly. Yeah, love that. All right, well, I guess since we don't have a lie to guess, my question is going to be, what show is your theater producing this summer?
Oh,
or are they?
Great question. Yeah, we've got 3 more shows this season. We're working on we do a youth camp every year. Hunk Junior is what we're doing with them. It's story of the Ugly Duckling. Then we have Macbeth coming up, and then The Music Man. So.
Oh, fun. Yeah. Now that The Music Man has been re-released for community theaters to be able to do again.
Exactly. So.
Very cool. They don't call it the president. I'm the program manager for my community theater as well. We're doing Little Women this summer, which has been a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah. All right. Well, Steve has a day off, our scorekeeper, so I don't need to bring him back out. But I do want to thank you for being on the show. It's been a great conversation, and I love the fact that we're looking at it from the narrator's point of view, and that for all you clean authors out there are narrators out there who want to read your books. They are looking for your content, and there is a place for everyone to help push this, dare I say, movement forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah. And so all of you listeners out there, look for Emma Faye's books. The books that she's narrated, help support her and the authors that she has read for. And please subscribe, follow, share. That's the best way to help the podcast grow, is by sharing it either online or by word of mouth. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.